Economic Forum on Africa has kicked off. Protests have also started to flare up. Now, our business anchor, Ayabonga Tawe, is standing by for us. He is attending the World Economic Forum, and coming out of there is that the protesters are wanting to speak to President Cyril Ramaphosa. Aya, what are we learning this hour?
Stabilize. Afternoon to you once again, Thabo. We're still outside here at the Cape Town International Convention Centre. And as you can see behind me, the protests continue, the singing continues in what has certainly been for the last few hours or so a flare-up here. And we've seen more high school students joining this protest and many other people coming out of their workplaces to join this particular protest in commemoration of the life of Uyinene Mrwetyana. And they are saying that it's important that the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, comes out to address this audience that has gathered here this afternoon. And I must say that anybody who's inside the Cape Town International Convention Centre in some of the breakaway sessions would certainly be distracted by much of the singing and much of the activity outside here. And we certainly haven't seen anybody from the South African government coming out to address the protesters here. But I guess only time will tell, Thabo, about what's happening here. But it seems as the afternoon wears on that this crowd is growing in number.
And of course, our conversations are continuing, of course, around WEF, Fourth Industrial Revolution, quite key. But how do you open the economy so that it benefits everybody? What are some of the key conversations you've heard so far?
So indeed, Thabo, there are conversations that continue inside here, notwithstanding the protests that we see outside. We had an opportunity earlier on to speak to the head of communications at the World Economic Forum, Oliver Kahn, earlier on this morning. And certainly, I guess, laying the scene for some of the conversations that are going to happen here, be it around data being the new form of gold and how we're able to, I guess, mobilize the data of South Africans and try and commercialize that and also ensure privacy and security of that kind of data. We also do know that much of the conversation around the Fourth Industrial Revolution is about how we can ensure that the outcomes and the growth that comes from all of the shifts in technology is more inclusive, and that needs regulation, that needs rules, and I guess a reframing of the rules of the game. And that's much of what's been occupying the conversation today. But I can assure you as well, Thabo, that there has been much conversation about some of the African countries that have pulled out of this event. We saw some delegates from Zimbabwe inside earlier on today having conversations about how they can attract investment into the Zimbabwean economy. We also outside had an opportunity to speak to some members of the ruling ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe, and alongside them there was another grouping that was anti-President Mnangagwa, many of which come from the Movement for Democratic Change in Zimbabwe. So a lot of what is happening inside also, I guess, mirroring itself outside in some of the protests and in some of the picketing that we've seen.
So, Aya, then you're saying this afternoon, indeed, there is confirmation of the pulling out of some key countries from this World Economic Forum on Africa.
Well, Thabo, the confirmation came much earlier this morning. When we spoke to Oliver Kahn, he indicated to us that the Rwandan delegation had told them as early as last week, I think towards the tail end of last week, that they would not be coming here. Similarly with the Malawian delegation, in as much as the news came out yesterday, the organizers of this event were already aware that these nations would not be attending. The one nation they weren't too sure about was the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and they said they hadn't heard anything from that delegation, and they hadn't really cancelled on them. So they were still anticipating that the possibility might be that some of them would still come.